Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Product People live stream. We're just starting and allowing people to join. Give us just a moment as we allow more and more people to join our live stream. While we wait, though, you're more than welcome to either scan your screen or type in slido.com and the code here so you can ask questions and answer polls. There will be one poll question coming up very shortly, so you can go ahead and set yourself up with slido.com, enter the code. That's your ability to ask us questions as well as participate in the poll that will happen momentarily. I'm going to give about 30 more seconds to allow more people to roll in before we get started. As this is streaming on multiple platforms, welcome to anybody that's on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and any other channel that might be streaming this. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thanks for joining for another exciting edition of the Product People live stream. Give it about 10 more seconds and then we'll start moving forward. But again, scan or go to slido.com, enter the code. This is where you're going to be able to ask questions or participate in the poll. We're going to ask you a question in just a moment. All right, I'm going to go ahead and move forward. So today we have Maria Petrova, the VP product at TWAICE. Speed as a habit, mastering time to market and product management. This is a really exciting topic for me. I think as somebody that's worked in startups as well as large enterprises, there tends to be a difference in terms of the gear that you end up moving in because of the different stages of an organization. And yet, it's always important to move quickly, especially in an evolving world. APIs, AI, etc. I can't speak to it as well as Maria can, but things are always moving faster and they're going to continue to move faster as computational speeds increase and we have more and more powerful tools at our disposal. I think this is a really cool thing for us to be thinking about is how to utilize these things and actually move faster. So I'm very much excited for it. I'm going to allow Maria to introduce herself in more detail when she takes over, but I'm going to continue. And again, thanks for everybody for joining. And thank you in particular to Maria for sharing your knowledge generously with our product people community.
Thank you for having me.
Cool. I'm your host, John Freeman. I'm a client solutions partner at Product People. I'm a former consultant with Product People. Happy to talk to anybody on this live stream. If you want to connect with me via LinkedIn, happy to talk product management with you. And if you're ever interested in utilizing Product People services, we are a product management consultancy. In addition to hosting events like this, our community building side of the organization, but happy to engage with anybody in the community that's willing to connect and talk product management or talk how we at Product People can help your company solve challenges and actually deliver great products faster. Just a quick introduction to Product People. We are interim product management as a service. That is our primary thing as a consultant. If there are parental leaves or you have a gap in your staff as a consequence of, let's say, somebody leaving, you know it's going to take multiple months for you to hire, but you need to continue to ensure that you are delivering value. We come in and we fill in that product management role on your behalf, in addition to doing traditional product management consulting, 0 to 1, MVP, ideation, that sort of thing. But that's the money generating side. How we give back is what you're doing today, which is our free events. We host live in-person events as well as this live stream every single Tuesday. If you haven't subscribed to any of our channels yet, please do. Every single Tuesday, we have wonderful product leaders from the product management community giving their experience and sharing their knowledge generously like Maria is doing today. So now on to our question. If you want to go onto Slido, again, scan the code. Otherwise, go to slido.com, enter in that code. What is often the biggest bottleneck in reducing time to market for new product features? A, inefficient decision making and approvals. B, lack of engineering resources. C, inefficient ways of working within your team. Or D, insufficient user research and validation. I'm going to give about, say, 30 seconds to a minute, somewhere around there. Let some of the answers roll in, and then we'll share the results in just a moment. I have an opinion on this, that's for sure. I'm wondering if it's in alignment with the rest of our audience. I will save my opinion as the results are rolling in.
It would be so hard to choose one.
Right? Yeah. I can attest to having multiple bottlenecks in my career. I think each of these has been a bottleneck at different points, depending on the organization and depending on the challenges. But yeah, I'd love to hear what the audience says. Give it about 15 more seconds. All right. So, two-thirds of our audience believes inefficient decision-making and approvals. Certainly a real possibility here. And a third believe that is inefficient ways of working within your team. That certainly happened to me at various parts of my career, as well as lack of engineering resources and insufficient user research and validation. So all are certainly true. But it's good to hear that the audience thinks that there is a particular number one challenge that we need to overcome. All right, so all that being said, now it is time for me to stop sharing my screen. Maria, I'd like to hand the controls over to you. And again, I'm really excited for your talk, looking forward to it. I'll stop sharing and allow you to take over.
Thank you, John. Let's see. All right. Thank you for having me, and thank you, product people, for giving back so much to community and organizing all these events and giving opportunity to different people to share the knowledge or their findings or their learnings. I'm super happy to be here and talk about topic that I hold really dear to my heart: mastering time to market and mastering speed in product management. I need to apologize for two things in front of the audience. First one is I got cold over the weekend, so sorry for my voice. I hope you can still hear me and understand what I'm talking about. And the other one, we have a little bit of a weird setup today with slides, so there might be some weird movements on the screen while I'm presenting. I'm apologizing for that in advance, and I hope it works out. Let me talk about who I am. So I'm Maria. I've been doing product management for more than 15 years, and I actually love it. When I started doing product management 15 years ago, I figured that I found my true passion. I'm experienced in building software as a service, machine learning based, AI based, and data products. So I'm very deeply on the tech side of story if you talk about products that I've done. I have been on a growth journey with a number of tech companies in Europe, including giants like Zalando and also a couple of successful unicorns and scale ups like Smartly and Supermetrics. And currently, I'm working for a green tech company based in Munich called TWAICE. We are building battery and energy storage intelligence software. It's a very niche thing, but we really hope that we will enable green energy transition with that one. As a person, I'm mom of a teenage girl and one Maine Coon cat. So if somebody wants to connect on LinkedIn and discuss those two topics, you're super welcome to do that. But now let's get into the topic. And let's talk about why speed actually matters so much. And we know that product management sometimes described as the discipline that helps us to define the right problems to solve for our users. But if we look at it from a broader, a little bit from a business perspective and how to make the company we work for successful, it's not about finding the right problem to solve, right? It's about solving it right. And whoever solves it first from the market, from the competition, gets the first mover advantage. The faster you move, the more chances you have to grab the market opportunity. And that's why speed matters that much when we look outside of the company. When we look inside, I found through my journey that speed is probably the best way you can build trust and decrease tension between stakeholders. If you release once a year, everyone is very, very, very anxious about what goes into this release. If you release every week, people are more relaxed about you making a mistake, not getting it right from the first place, and so on. The other part is that speed of delivery in the current environment usually helps to improve the lifetime value of the customer. Customers know that progress is unavoidable, things change, and they really appreciate that we get our product improvements in really fast. And that's how they stay with us longer, especially if you're working on the B2B SaaS side of things. So I think you cannot underestimate speed, especially working in the growth environments, startup environments. And today I want to talk a little bit more about how product managers can contribute to making this speed actually working for their companies. And I will talk a little bit about the terms first, because I think it's also super important. And I've been doing product management for 15 years. And throughout all of these 15 years, I've been hearing about speed. But sometimes we talk about speed from the perspective of velocity. And it's like, especially if you've been around for long enough and you remember all these agile talks, scrum talks, when we talk about velocity of engineering, we're usually thinking about how we can optimize the average amount of work a team completes during the sprint. We measure it by story points or by hours. So we are trying to figure out the ways how a team can do more with less or with the same number of resources. And that's not a topic of what I want to discuss today. I want to talk about a different story, which I think is more relevant for product people. And I want to talk about speed to market. So, how long does it take for a team to take a product idea, develop it, and put it into customer hands, right? So, it's about value to market, not a feature to market necessarily, that we'll be talking about today. And yes, I think I have some stuff to share on that one. Again, just to re-emphasize, we are talking about value here. So it's not necessarily that after you listen to me and maybe pick up some of my learnings and put it into use, you'll be able to ship 1,000 features instead of 100 per year. But you can definitely look at my learnings from the perspective on how we can deliver more value more faster for our customers. Why I hold this topic so dear to my heart. So in my current journey, in my current company, TWAICE, when I joined, we got the situation when everything took at least 6 months to be done. And of course, nobody on the commercial side, nobody on go-to-market side was super happy with engineering team, because nothing gets out. And when something gets out, the stakes are super high. And we actually, through last 9 to 8 months, we moved from that approach to the situation where we get things out, valuable, validated, customer-facing things out every month. And I want to talk about a couple of things that actually helped us to get there. And those things will be on the next slide. Yes, so 5 things. One is that we introduced practice of discovering problem as a team, and I'll talk more about that. The other thing that we do, we draw and write together, we concentrate, we run as many experiments as we can afford, and we always aim to fail and pivot as early as possible. And those 5 things we introduced gradually. We started with one team, now it's a general practice across all engineering, product, and design, and it worked really well for us. So maybe after I share it, you can also pick up some of these tricks, some of these learnings, and put it into use. And some of the stuff I'll be talking today about might seem a little bit unconventional. It's not necessarily something that you've seen in the best practice book. So you will have during Q&A session a chance to challenge me on that, and also maybe to clarify why we do the things the way we do and not differently. So let's talk about discovery. I cannot empathize it more, and I'm a very, almost a religious believer that shared context for the whole team is the key to the fast execution. So if everyone on the product team, and by everyone I mean developers, designers, data scientists, product managers, whoever works on the product, are on the same page about who is the user, what is the value, what is the user journey, what is the user flow, it makes so much easier and so much faster for this team to execute. So discovery is not just the way to identify the problem or figure out what customer really needs. Discovery actually can be used as a practice that brings everyone on the same page in terms of the context. Therefore, every team member listens to the customer, and that's how you form the shared context on the goal. When I say everyone listens to the customer, I do not mean that every single team with 8 people on it goes to every single customer meeting. That's impossible, right? So we need to keep easy access to the notes. We need to record as many customer meetings as we can. And afterwards, we need to spend time together to align on interpretations. But we try to make it so that everyone has on the team has an access to the customer, not just product manager or UX researcher or designer or whoever owns the discovery. In our teams, we don't have an owner of discovery. That's everybody's job. And whoever has time, whoever is best positioned right now to engage with customer does it. The rest try to check on what was recorded or what kind of notes were put in or something like that. And what it helps with, you can see on the picture, that's probably the picture that I've used the most over my entire product management career when I try to explain to people why discovery matters so much, right? So you've probably seen it a lot as well. And we know how what customer wants usually is not what people interpret customer wants, not what then we design, not what then we deliver, and so on. So basically, making sure that everyone has the same context of what customer wants and interpret it the right way requires the whole team to work on the discovery topic together. Discovery is a big thing, and we all spend a lot of time working on it. So let's go a bit deeper into it and talk about do's and don'ts. And let's start with do's, and I'll reiterate on the fact that everyone from product team should take part in discovery. And I intentionally brought in this agile two tracks picture, right? When you have a discovery track or design track, and then you have a delivery track. And in discovery track, you can only see PM and UX, and the delivery track, you see team. That's not how you should do discovery, in my opinion, in year 2025. Developers also have eyes and ears. They have brilliant ideas. Bring them on board, let them know what customer is actually interested in, and make sure that they also can listen like firsthand without any interpretation what customers are talking about, what are their problems, what are their pain points. Discovery doesn't have to be a special project. Sometimes when we talk about discovery, and that what actually took a lot of time when we were at this situation when we had one release every 6 months, was that discovery was treated as a project that you need specifically project manage, that you specifically need to allocate time for. Rather, you need to incorporate discovery in all customer engaging activities. If there is a jour fix with the customer and your customer success is handling it, ask them to record it, ask them to ask a couple of questions that might be a very cool customer insight, or ask them to shadow. That's how you actually can learn a lot as well. Try to set up an environment where you can get insights about customer needs, wants, and discover their life a little bit better in a way that it just comes your way from meeting notes, from support requests, from whatever interactions with the customer your team has or your bigger organization has. There are 2 points which I always underline when we are talking about discovery with my teams. One is that seek for the context. Context is very important, and understanding in which context customer is asking for something sometimes is more important than actually the need itself, right? Because without the right context, you cannot understand the right journey, you cannot understand the right specification. It's really hard to derive requirements. So the more you know about the context, the better. And the other thing is observe and shadow more, talk less, because sometimes from observation, you can actually get the most valuable insights for your product development, rather than when you're proactively asking customers, do they like green, or do they prefer button in the bottom of a page or in the top of it. So if you do it in a way that you actually lean towards observation and you not treat discovery as a special project, but you rather try to incorporate bits and pieces of it in every customer engagement point, You can do it really quickly and you can accumulate knowledge faster compared to the situation when we sit down, we write a research brief, and then we go ahead and try to discover specific topics with our customers. And that's how you can speed up on the discovery side. Let's also talk a little bit about don'ts and things that might slow you down and things that might actually undermine the findings of your discovery. I guess those are very obvious, right? The first thing to avoid is to seek for confirmation. Do you really like it? What would you do? All these questions that are leading customer to a certain way of thinking, we should always avoid. Try not to cherry pick the data. And also getting back to my point that you need to incorporate discovery with all possible customer engagement and customer engagement moments and customer touch points. That actually helps you to get bigger volume of data and avoid cherry picking, avoiding looking only at certain subset of customers rather than looking across the customer base. And the last one, which is a pretty much speed related thingy, don't sit on the feedback. And by don't sit on the feedback, I mean that if customer gives you a straightforward feedback that they're struggling with something, right? That it's unclear, the naming of this top is unclear, or there's some specific chart that they cannot read because all the bars are the same tone or the same shade of gray, don't sit on this feedback. You actually don't need 5 weeks of research to reconfirm that this is inconvenient, this is a usability problem. Something like that happens and request is cheap to implement in a way that you don't have to spend months, ages building it, and a very straightforward, just take it into the sprint and implement it straight away. And that actually works pretty well when you allow your developers to be part of the discovery process, because they can pick up things like that really, really quickly, and they can say like, yeah, it's just an hour of work, let's just do it. Which helps you to decrease the degree of usability debt, feature debt, and all those small things that people constantly complain about that overwhelm product managers handling mature product. So don't sit on the feedback. If it makes sense, just do it. Let's talk about the next thing. And the next thing that I mentioned was drawing and writing together. And this is the thing that refers to solution design stage. When we have accumulated all our discoveries, we know that we have a great idea, a great product improvement in hand. How can we make sure that we speed up solution design stage and also conduct it in a way that will speed up our execution stage? What works really well from my point of view, from my observation, is that when this whole solution design is again not a one person responsibility, but rather a teamwork. So what we do, we create user journey maps. We actually do like to begin every solution in with mapping out all the stages, all the workflows and things like that. The way we do it, that we call in everyone who works on the project, and we ask these people to create their maps, and then we converge. And that helps us to actually bring people on the same page in terms of what would be the experience that we are delivering with our product. And why it is so essential, because then when people go to their areas and they start to put in their user stories, they start to put in their code, they can actually still have the same picture in their mind about what the general user journey looks like. Similar with requirement docs. Again, we try to do it in a workshop. We try to write it together. Design protos. Sometimes we even do a crazy thing when we ask people to brainstorm several options, like one comes from designers and the other one comes from developers, and then we compare and converge. It's really important for the validation stage of your solution that you have a number of things here, because that allows you to compare and contrast and actually fail earlier and pivot depending on the design option you go forward with. And then, yeah, the other document we try to put together in a collaborative way is a tech design doc, which usually contains an outline of components, changes, dependencies that we need to make on a code level. And again, it actually helps, for example, designers to understand how many components, what would be the complexity of the system that they actually trying to put on a screen, and what would be the logic behind it. So again, treat all of it as a collaborative work. You might think that that's a a lot of time spent together. People don't like it. People want to focus on their jobs and they don't want to be in one workshop. But actually, spending 1 hour, 2 hours together on that helps to decrease time required on alignment and clarification later down the execution stage a lot, by degree of a lot, how one of my friends used to say. So I would highly recommend these writing sessions, conducting those together. Then let's move to the next stage. And this is the validation stage, right? So we've done our discovery, we have our solution, we have an idea. And then now we need to figure out like what would be the ways for us to double check if we are on the right track. And there are a number of things to consider during this stage. And first thing first, you shouldn't skip this stage ever, because you'll be so surprised, even though if you've done your discovery very well and to the T, and you've talked to many users and everything is described in every detail, that what you come up with as a solution might miss the goal by a lot. So never skip this stage. And then when you try to validate, you can also speed up a little bit. The first thing to do is to understand what would be the biggest assumption we are making and how we can validate in the fastest way possible. We might make assumptions on the user level, right? That they have access to some sort of data, or that they have ability to use a certain device, or that they have an ability to use internet without interruptions. I don't know exactly. It really depends on the specifics of your product, but there are always a couple of assumptions that we are making while we are doing our solution proposal. And let's look at all this and figure out which one is the biggest one, so we can basically spend the most of the time figuring out if there are ways for us to decrease the risk and figure out if this assumption is actually the true one or a wrong one. I already mentioned the second point. You need to try more than one idea, because that helps you to compare and contrast. And maybe in the end of the day, you will converge a couple of options into one. But at least when you try to present solution idea to your customers, your stakeholders for the first time, it's way easier to do it when you have a number of options, and then they can select what they like, what they don't like, and which is the preferred one. And again, the last point here will be all about speed. Surprise, surprise. Not everything needs to be validated by the customer. Don't tell anyone that I have told you this bad thing, because you know how product managers are always pushed to talk to customers as much as possible. But in reality, every customer meeting needs to be scheduled, needs to be appointed. You need to wait. Customer will not show up. You need to reschedule, and again and again and again. And it usually increases the timeline for the project that you're working on. And how we can validate without customers? The first thing is you can do benchmarking, especially if you're working on a solution that has underlying customer workflow that is actually repetitive across different industries. I'm building a lot of data products, and every data product ends up being a dashboard, right? It doesn't matter if this dashboard is all about energy insights, or is it all about stock market insights? There's still certain patterns that you can see in both of those dashboards. And sometimes you don't have to ask customers which chart they prefer. You can just look at big guys or different guys, how they do it, and validate your solution against industry best practices or design best practices or whatever. And you actually can pick up ideas for your solutions this way a bit faster. The other thing is that sometimes if it takes too long to appoint a meeting with the customer, you can actually involve your colleagues from customer-facing functions. And there is a lot of debate going on whether you should bypass your colleagues from customer-facing functions and only talk directly to customers, or whether you should listen to them. I am leaning to the side which says you should listen to them with a notion, right? You need to know how to ask your questions, what would be the right questions, and what would be the right data points to pick up. But let's give these guys a credit. They work with customers day and night. They know their context. They know how they use products usually. So if you ask the right questions, and those questions should focus more on not what customer would pay for or will customer like it, but rather how do you think customer will put it into use? Or how often do you think customers will engage with this screen? Then you can get a very, very valuable pieces of information which are right next to you, right? It's just one Slack message away. Again, that will make you faster with your validation practices. So we validated, we maybe iterated a couple of times before we got a success and confirmation from our users, stakeholders, market, that solution is the right one. Now it's time to execute. And I will not spend too much on this topic because I think that you can just fill one big library with literature written on how you can speed up the execution in one way or another. The only recommendation from my side would be concentrate, right? Nothing helps your velocity, your time to output in terms of software delivery better than work in progress limits. If you manage to set up your workflow, your ways of working with a team in a way that they work on one, max two topics at a time, it will create miracles. Just make sure that you have good relationship with stakeholders. You can explain to everyone around your team and protect them in a way that they can concentrate. And that will help to execute faster in terms of software delivery. Okay, then the last point that I had on my slide where I outlined 5 things that helped us to get faster was running more experiments. And again, this might look a little bit unconventional, but I want to touch on this topic because I've seen quite a lot of teams struggling with that. So there is a classic approach on how we conduct research and delivery. And usually we look at research as a separated process or even a separated project that happens before we deliver, and that helps us to decrease the risk, decrease the number of errors, and bulletproof something that we put into delivery. And that's like old, very old, waterfallish, I would say, way of doing things, right? You research, you spend some time, you come up with a solid idea, you do the validation, then you deliver, then you learn, and then you inform your next idea and your next research project starts. What I want you to consider is the idea that experiment is actually product experiment is actually a form of discovery on its own if you're talking on the like if you're looking at it in a bigger scheme of things. So what we try to adopt is a sequence of product instead of this long research then delivery. We approach our product development as a sequence of product experiments to get to value faster. So basically, we start somewhere, we do research and delivery almost at the same time, maybe spending the first half of the sprint on research, the second half of the sprint on delivery. And then we try to get it deployed, put it in front of the customer as fast as possible so we can inform our next iteration and our next iteration and our next iteration, which allows us to pivot really fast. If idea number 1 doesn't work, we can go to idea number 2, or our idea number 2 might be a modification of idea number 1. But we make sure that we do these small iterations, and every iteration is a specific isolated experiment with clear criteria on how do we call it a success or how do we call it a failure. So if you run more experiments, you have more options, you have more opportunities, and the value in the end of the day will you'll get to this point where you delivered a valuable improvement, a valuable product for the customer a little bit faster. All right, so I have, and that's what I have told you about slides, but I have a bit of a bonus track. The other thing that I want to talk about today is what kind of product management mindset helps to accelerate time to market. So I covered a lot of topics on what would be the practices and how you can change the ways you work together with a team to make yourself faster. But the other part is how you can change, or maybe already have it, what would be the mindset that requires from the product manager to accelerate time to market. And I think it is really important to understand that it's not just about what we do, it's also about what you bring to the table in terms of how you think about your role and how you think about your ways of working and engaging with other people. So let's get back to the classical question, who is product manager? And one of the answers we have, chief executive officer of a product. You've heard it, I've heard it. It kind of pops here and there all the time still. Maybe it's been around for the last 10 years, but it never goes away. I personally do not believe that we can ever put CEO, chief executive officer, and a product manager on the same side. First things first, do you want to command or enable? CEOs have power. They can fire people, they can hire people. You cannot hire and fire your stakeholders and hardly ever hire and fire even team members you're working with on a daily basis. So you really need to consider, how can you lead without authority? How can you bring this context that people actually share your point of view? How you can bring this customer context to them, this business context to them. So I wouldn't necessarily go into the product development process, especially if you want to conduct it super fast with the mindset of being chief executive officer, because you will get a lot of pushback from your team. You will spend a lot of time in alignments. Please treat product management as a collaborative leadership job, not as a job where you give orders. All right, that's the first myth. Then let's go to the next one. Maybe product manager is the one who says no. Also a very, very common meme, I would even say, by that point in time. Again, I do not think that just by saying no to all the people, you actually make your team moving faster, because there is a danger in this approach. And the danger comes from the fact, if you start with no every single conversation you have, people at some point start bringing input to you. Eventually, they will even start listening to you. And as I already mentioned, it's essential that every piece of information that is relevant for the product development, that is coming from the customer, somehow gets your way, ends up on your plate, and you're able to bring all this context that is needed for your team to actually develop valuable products efficiently and in a fast way. So no, I don't think that the mindset of I'm the person who says no is the right one to speed up the product development process, contrary to what they write on the internet. So what would be my advice? My advice would be, put your ego aside. As a product managers, we really need to have a small ego. Otherwise, it's a really hard work to be in if you have a big one. And become a catalyst. So some of you studied chemistry at school. Some of you might remember what is catalyst. And catalyst is this weird substance that doesn't take part in a chemical reaction per se, but that agents that provokes or speed up significant change and action. So that's basically a substance that whoever works in the lab adds to other chemicals, and that helps the reaction to go faster. And if product managers perceive themselves this way, they actually figure out the ways how to bring the right information, how to connect the dots, how to facilitate all the things that needs facilitated in terms of communication between different teams to make sure that the value gets to the customer as fast as possible. So if you ask me what would be the right mindset that I should bring to the table if I want my team to be as fast as possible, remember your, I don't know, whichever grade it was, chemistry lesson, and remember about catalyst. All right, so with that, I want to conclude. It never gets easier with product management, but you always can go faster. Thank you for listening to me for such a long time, and I guess now it's time for Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That I took a lot of notes. I have several questions myself, and some of those things certainly resonated with me. I cannot. I mean, the value of an engineering partner that will challenge you on your assumptions is just something that cannot be overstated. And that's one of many takeaways from me. Audience, this is your time where you can, in fact, ask some questions. We're asking that you put your questions via Slido. So you can either scan via with your phone or whatever you think you need to use, or go to slido.com and use this code. Enter your questions there. That is the best way in order to make sure that they're consolidated and that we can get them in front of Maria so she can answer them. Well, quick, I'm just going to go and talk a little bit more about Product People as a business. As a reminder for what we do, we are a consulting firm. If there's ever a need for interim product management as a service, that is what we are here for. Parental leaves, or if there's a gap in your staff for any other reason, let's say you're pre-series A, you want product management, you don't necessarily feel like you can hire an FTE for legal reasons, you can call us. We also do product ops, transformation acceleration, and again, 0 to 1 iteration and MVPs, all that fun stuff as well, but our primary use case is interim product management as a service. We've worked with a lot of different B2B and B2C clients. Here's a selection of some of our B2C clients, some of which you have likely engaged with as a customer. On the B2B side, some that you may or may not be aware of, including the WHO. Some stats. We've supported a lot of teams. We are very proud of the fact that we are a diverse organization. The vast majority of our leadership is, in fact, women, which is a unique thing and actually I think beneficial from a product management perspective, leading with empathy. And that's enough about product people and back to Q&A. I'm going to let some of those questions roll in. But as we wait, I certainly have a couple that I've written down that I'm curious about. One of which, the thing that you talked about, discovering problems as a team and making sure that your engineers, your designers, everybody else that's involved actually is participating and being an active, and they're actively engaging. Have you faced any challenges in kind of setting this mindset? Because what I've seen at different organizations is design or engineering is seen as kind of order takers, so to speak. Here's something that I need you to go do it. They're not necessarily a part of the process. So there oftentimes seems to be a mindset shift, not only within the organization, but also within those individual contributors. Can you talk about how you might have helped people overcome that hesitancy to maybe participate and raise their hand and share their opinion and get them actually actively engaged in the discovery process?
Oh yeah, of course I've seen that. And moreover, in even in my current company, there were a little bit of this debate on who owns the discovery, right? That's quite common one. And my answer was always everyone who works on a product owns the discovery. There are different conflicts, I would say, on the go. The one that sometimes happens between designers and or whoever is in charge of UX UI and product managers. And what people need to understand is that they look at customer from a little bit of a different standpoint with a different lens. So it's not like one should conduct it and the other one just should take an input from or like summary from the research. It should be so that everyone has an access to the raw data. And by the raw data, I mean like to the real customer statements, to the verbatims, to the quotes, and so on and so forth. And the other, a bit of a different story comes when you talk about engineering. And some engineers are very focused on code, and they don't necessarily like to be distracted and involved into such activities. What helped me is to actually find those agents of change within engineering. A lot of practices that I brought when I joined TWAICE, I started to implement within one team. This team over time became like maybe 2 times faster than the rest of the engineering. And they started to ask, like, okay, the rest started to ask, how can we do the same? Right? So you probably start with the engineers who are naturally more leaning towards customer, more interested genuinely in what's going on with customer. You start working with them, and little by little, you roll it out, you roll this practice out to the rest of the team.
That makes sense. And I can again express how important it is to me to have a strong engineer that will challenge me on any assumption that is being made. I think that has been hypercritical in some of the products that I've seen that are successful.
Yeah, just maybe to add here is that
Mm.
interpretation actually matters, right? And we all have our own emotions, and it's impossible to stay absolutely outside of your personal perceptions, your personal biases. So when two-person watch the same customer interview recording, they might conclude slightly different things or take away just slightly different things out of it. That's why it's really important that you actually share opinions and then you try to form the joint interpretation later on based on input from various people from various sources.
Wholeheartedly agree. Next question that we have coming in from Slido is, can you share an example of a time when moving too fast backfired, and how did your team recover?
Um, it's not about how fast we deploy, it's about how fast we roll back, right? I've heard it a couple of times from developers. Of course, there are situations when moving too fast might backfire. Usually backfires, in my opinion, in a technical form. It's usually about like releasing something that is buggy or releasing something that is more probably half baked. The best thing you can do is to monitor super closely right after the release that if everything is okay, and if it's not, being prepared to say like, okay, things didn't go right from the first go, we roll back, we will retro on it, and we will prepare our next iteration.
That makes sense. And I can attest that I'm guilty of encouraging engineers in the past to cut corners so I could get something out faster, and then that biting me a little bit. So I
Yeah, and then
definitely
there is
understand
this
that.
one dependency from the other team, right? That nobody remembers about.
Exactly. Next question is, how do you set up and manage work in progress limits effectively without frustrating stakeholders who want everything now?
Oh, that's a brilliant question. The thing is that my favorite saying here is that 9 women cannot deliver a baby in a month. So even if we start working on 9 projects together, we will not probably have in a month nine ideal product improvements. And that's on one hand, right? So you need to make sure that you actually invite your stakeholders to the prioritization. So first you say that we cannot do 9, we only can do 2, but then stakeholders need to be given a say in which 2 you're going after. And if you open about your priorities, how you assign priorities, and you also give them the opportunity to actually weigh in on what you have decided, that decreases a little bit the tension. And the other part is the speed itself. If your stakeholders see that it's not like you only release once in 6 months, and if they will not insist on you taking this project on today, they will not see the results till the end of next year. You can little by little earn their trust, and they give you more freedom to actually prioritize on your own, because they know if they're asking for something and it doesn't probably appear in a product in the next sprint, it will appear in the product if it matters in like 2 or 3 sprints from now. So actually being fast helps you with work in progress limits in the long run.
I love that. Yeah. Proof is in the delivery, so to speak. Hey, we're moving, you're seeing the results, you're involved in the process. Put some onus on them, which I like. Uh, Question now is, how do you balance rapid releases with maintaining a high standard of product quality?
Oh, that's a very good one. And we already touched a bit on it, like, right? When we said that, like, what would be the most common situations when speed actually backfires. Yeah, quality of the releases is something that we need to always keep in mind. Uh, in my current situation with my current product, we have gradual rollout practices. So we first release behind feature flag, and we try to dog food ourselves as much as possible. So dog fooding when you ask people internally to use your own product. That helps us to discover the most obvious problems, right? Then, depending on the feature, we can agree on a rollout plan. So we can roll out to a couple of alpha testers, to a couple of trusted customers, and again collect some feedback, and then we roll out it gradually. I think that in like majority of companies currently, it's hard to find or establish a QA team, which would be cool, but there is no budget for it usually. That's why we lean toward these gradual rollout practices. But I don't think that quality assurance will take so much time, again, if everyone is on the same page and shares the same context. So if you have a luxury of working with a quality assurance specialist, just treat them as a part of your team, bring them on board during solution design stage, during discovery stage, and then they will test quickly and it will not become a bottleneck.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, and QA processes are all over the map. It all depends on the organization and the structure. Yeah, but for sure. What are the most common resistance points when trying to accelerate time to market, and how do you address them?
Um, a very good question. So a number, depending on, again, like people you're speaking with, where they're coming from, where they used to work. The first one is the anxiety about quality of the product. If we move fast and break things, how can we deliver a certain standard of quality? This is a really common uh, problem. This is a really common resistance point, especially in the enterprise products, especially if people who are working with you are coming from like huge corporations where they have one deployment in 5 years and a QA process that runs for 6 months. They usually like they cannot tolerate this speed, and then you just need again like to explain that there is a process how we control quality and it's incorporated, and we do not decrease our standards just because we are moving faster. That would be first resistance point. The other resistance point is on a little bit different side of a spectrum, where people adopted this whole research mindset and stick to it in a very, very strict way. And then it's like we need more time for research and we want to de-risk the rollout. We want to de-risk what goes into delivery. Again, it's just a question of how you treat your delivery. Do you treat it in a way that we build something and we never, 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 never roll it back and we stick to it? Or do you treat it in a way that we will build something quickly, we will experiment, and we are open if it doesn't work to roll it back and start from scratch. And this is the discussion you need to have as a team and agree on this as a base principle if you want to move faster. The last point that I want to mention, and it's really important actually in practice to take it into account, that you can only, especially in B2B SaaS environments, but also in a customer facing products, you can only ship as many improvements as people can mentally handle. So sometimes when you release feature after feature after feature, people from product marketing or from customer success, they just get tired of you. And they start to ask you to release in some sort of a bucket because otherwise for them, it's like a new product every week. And you need to be mindful to make sure that they are on board early on with those changes and they actually can handle those changes in a comprehensive way. And they are very important stakeholders for you to think about when you create your release and rollout plans.
And I think that's a really great point, and I think that'll lead us into what is likely the last question of the evening, which is, you had mentioned partnering with marketing and also partnering with any of your customer facing, your client facing constituents within your organization. In a B2B setting, I'm thinking sales, and oftentimes there's a clash between product managers and sales in many organizations as sales is trying to sell features, PMs are trying to create the best product possible. but they're oftentimes, in a clash if somebody agrees to something from a client before it's been aligned with a bigger picture, overarching product strategy, right? So how are you effectively utilizing the sales teams, ensuring that collaboration is there and making sure nobody's stepping on each other's foot, so to speak, with respect to the communications with the client and what can ultimately be sold in a B2B world?
Oh yeah, that's probably a topic for whole another live stream, to be honest. Like maybe few points. Uh, Business is not built by one function. It is not built by design or by product management or by sales. In the end of the day, if your business wins, everyone wins. What helps to align product and sales is that when product and sales have a shared North Star or shared metric, and it can be very like closely tied to the revenue or to average customer value, whatever business metric is relevant for both parties. And if it happens, then people start to think how we can help each other rather how we can work against each other. The other thing that actually helps is to explain to people what you do. Like I'm working as a product manager can mean 1,000 different things in 1,000 different places. And do not expect your salespeople to read Marty Kagan or Melissa Perry or whoever is your favorite product author of the day, right? And what I've done when I just joined TWAICE, I actually book a meeting with all my sales managers and explain to them why discovery is important and what happens when product manager shadows your customer call. Because before that, they had been a bit afraid and they had a bit of this resistance of letting us into every customer meeting. But I made a deck and I explained like, hey, there is no danger. We might be most frequently joining in a silent mode just to listen in, just to understand how they speak, what they are talking about, what is topical for our customers. And that helped to release the tension. And one of the colleagues here just told me, like, hey, Maria, before you explained it, I wasn't even sure what are you guys doing. So just tell them like what you're doing, what are your goals, share it openly, and they might help and also learn about their goals and how you can help. Sometimes roadmaps sell even better than the product. So maybe jumping on the sales call with a roadmap might help to close one or two deals.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, that shared North Star is super hypercritical, so you're not having these conflicting desires happening from different parts of the organization. Maria, thank you so much. This was incredibly informative. I really enjoyed your talk and I enjoyed the Q&A session. We're going to end the live stream pretty soon. Maria, I'd like you to stay back when we do end. But thank you to you again. Thank you so much to the audience. For those of you who are uninitiated to product people, please like, subscribe, all those fun things. We do this every single Tuesday. Additional note, we are in fact hiring. So if anybody on this call is interested in working with product people, you're more than welcome to scan those links or go to our website, getproductpeople.com. You can also subscribe to our newsletter. And again, we do these every single Tuesday, these live streams. Next week, we'll be having probabilistic thinking for product managers with Martin Stahl, another interesting topic every Tuesday, 5 p.m. CET. We look forward to seeing you next time. And with that, we are going to end the stream. Thank you again, Maria. Thank you to the audience.
Thank you
And
so
we
much
hope
for
everybody
having
has a
me. Thank you for
wonderful
the
evening.
audience for spending time. Bye bye.